Okay, so let's talk about Thoothukudi, down in Tamil Nadu. You know, for ages, that place has basically been salt.
The salt capital.
Exactly. We're talking like 2.5 million tons a year, usually. Seasoning pretty much all of South India's food, you imagine.
Yes, it's a huge amount.
But then, this year, 2024, something completely backwards happened. They actually had to import edible salt. 40,000 tons of it.
It's quite the turnaround, isn't it? The place famous for making salt suddenly having to buy it from somewhere else.
I know. It just makes you stop and think, like, how does that even happen? You picture all those meals, Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra, all likely salted by Thoothukudi.
And now they're looking elsewhere.
Yeah. So that's what we're digging into today, why this happened, what it means for everyone there, and, is this just a blip or something bigger?
Right, because it touches on weather, on economics, maybe even climate change. It's a fascinating, if worrying, little case study.
Definitely. So let's start with just the scale of it, this great salt shortage of 2024, as it were. Thoothukudi isn't just a supplier, it's the supplier for Tamil Nadu and a major one for neighboring states. It's got history.
A very long history in salt production.
And then, boom, production drops by, what, 60%?
Yeah.
They only managed about 40% of that usual 2.5 million tons. It's like a star baker forgetting to turn the oven on.
It's a massive shortfall. And understanding why means looking at how they actually make the salt there. It's a very traditional process.
Solar evaporation, right. Pumping seawater into big, shallow pans.
Exactly. They let the sun do the heavy lifting, evaporating the water, leaving the salt crystals behind. It's beautifully simple, but...
We need sun. Lots of it.
Yeah.
And dry weather.
Precisely. And that's where the problem started this time. Unseasonal rains. Just relentless bad weather off the coast.
Oh. So sunshine needed, but they got rain instead.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ruins the whole process, doesn't it? Like trying to dry clothes in a monsoon.
That's a good way to put it. The rain dilutes the brine in the pans. You need concentration for crystals to form, and the rain just works against that entirely.
And wasn't there flooding, too? Like actual damage?
Yes. Back in December 2023, there were significant floods that damaged the salt pans themselves, the buns, the infrastructure. That was already a setback.
Okay.
And then 2024 didn't really let up. The rain continued right through the period when they should have been starting the harvest, February, March.
So the whole schedule got thrown off. Usually they start harvesting around February.
That's the ideal time, yeah. February through to about June is the main season. But this year, because of the persistent wet weather, they couldn't really get going properly until April.
Wow. So they lost crucial months right at the start. You can just picture the frustration.
Absolutely. That window for optimal solar evaporation is limited. Losing those early months makes it incredibly difficult to catch up later on. You just don't get the same yield.
Which brings us to this almost unbelievable scene. Ships arriving in Thoothukudi, carrying salt from Gujarat.
Yeah. 40,000 tons arriving at Viochdambarnar port. Refined free-flow salt. Crystal salt. The kind you use at home and in industry.
It feels so ironic. Like sending coals to Newcastle, isn't that the phrase?
Pretty much. And the key thing here was the price difference.
Ah, right. The local Thoothukudi salt, what little was available, the price shot up.
It did. Around 5,000 to 6,000 rupees per ton. But the Gujarat salt, even with transport costs included, was coming in cheaper.
How much cheaper?
Around 4,000 to 4,500 rupees per ton.
Okay, that's a noticeable difference. So why can Gujarat produce it for less? Is it just scale?
Scale is a huge part of it, yes. Gujarat is the absolute powerhouse of Indian salt production, over 70%, I think.
Wow.
They have the vast Rann of Kutch, massive salt flats, and generally a much drier, more reliably sunny climate for this kind of production.
So economies of scale and better weather, basically.
Exactly. They can produce vast quantities more efficiently.
Yeah.
And while Thoothukudi has imported industrial salt from Gujarat before, apparently, importing edible salt, the stuff for kitchens and tables, that's a first. It really underlines how bad the local shortage was.
Okay, so the immediate cause was definitely the weather, the rain, the floods. But is this just a really bad year, an anomaly? Or is something else going on? Does climate change fit in here?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And people on the ground, the manufacturers in Thoothukudi, they're saying things have changed.
What are they noticing?
They're talking about a definite shift in the rain patterns. That reliable dry season, February to June, it just doesn't seem so reliable anymore. It's becoming unpredictable.
I remember reading a quote from, was it John Probahar, an exporter, Something about climate change messing with our seasons.
That's the one. And he was quite clear about the negative impact. It's not just inconvenient. It fundamentally disrupts their entire business model, which is built around those predictable seasons.
And we mentioned the rain diluting the brine. Does that also make it more expensive to produce, even if they do get some salt?
Yes, significantly. You need more time, more energy, basically, to evaporate that extra water to get the salt to crystallize. So your production costs per ton go up.
Which leads to the price problem we talked about.
Exactly. And that price hike, up to 5,000 or 6,000 rupees a ton.
Makes it hard to compete, especially for exports.
Precisely. Prabhakar also mentioned that at those prices, Thoothukudi salt becomes too expensive to compete internationally. That's a major blow for a region that used to export quite a bit.
Oof. Okay, so this ripples outwards, doesn't it? It's not just the salt pan owners.
Not at all. It affects traders, consumers, the whole local economy.
Right. The price for Thoothukudi salt jumping from, say, 2,500 rupees a ton up to 5,000 or 6,000. That's more than double for salt. A basic necessity. You said there's still some local stock, but it's running low.
It's dwindling, yes, which is why that Gujarat import is actually quite important right now, even if it feels strange.
How so? For keeping prices down.
Sort of. From the trader's perspective, at least. We saw a comment from Thenraj, from the Salt Manufacturers Association there. He pointed out that the Gujarat salt, at that lower price, is viable. They can buy it, repackage it, sell it on. It helps them stay in business and, probably helps keep the final price for consumers from going even higher.
Ah, I see. So it's a bit of a lifeline for the traders and maybe eases the pressure on consumers somewhat. But what about the actual workers, the people on the salt pans, if production is down 60%?
That's the really concerning part long term. Salt production isn't just an industry in Thoothukudi. It's deeply woven into the community fabric. Generations of families rely on it.
Yeah.
A prolonged slump like this, it could mean serious job losses, hitting incomes hard in a place where it's a primary source of livelihood for many.
It really brings it home how connected everything is.
Yeah.
Weather patterns affect salt pans, which affects prices, jobs, traders, all stemming from something as basic as salt.
Exactly. It's in every kitchen, every restaurant.
So the big question then, can Thoothukudi bounce back? Is there a path forward?
Well, the immediate goal everyone seems focused on is getting those production costs back down, back to that 2,500 rupee per ton mark, ideally.
But how if the weather's becoming so unreliable?
That's the challenge. The sources suggest a few approaches are being considered. One is definitely about infrastructure.
Like building better defenses against the rain and floods.
Pretty much. Improving drainage, making the buns around the pan stronger, more resilient to extreme weather. It's about mitigating the physical damage.
Makes sense. What else?
There's talk about maybe diversifying the production seasons. If February to June is becoming too risky, are there other potential windows in the year? Maybe shorter, maybe less ideal, but better than nothing.
Adapting the schedule to the new reality, kind of.
Sort of exploring that, yeah. And then there's technology.
Modernizing the process.
Potentially. Things like more efficient solar evaporation techniques, perhaps some mechanization and harvesting. Could that help improve efficiency or reduce reliance on perfect weather? It's being looked at.
It sounds expensive, though. Infrastructure, technology.
It absolutely requires investment, which is where government support might come in.
Ah, okay. Like subsidies or loans.
That kind of thing. Subsidies, perhaps low-interest loans to help producers make these upgrades, maybe even insurance schemes to cushion the blow of future bad seasons.
Right.
And also support for climate adaptation strategies, like working more closely with meteorologists for better forecasting, planning.
So it sounds like there are potential solutions, but it needs a combination of things. Investment, adaptation, maybe some government help, and time.
Definitely time and money. And political will, probably. But, the people involved in the industry there, they're known for being resilient. They've been doing this for a very long time.
True. But this feels like a different kind of challenge.
It does. It feels systemic. Which brings us back to that bigger picture.
Yeah, it really does feel like Thoothukudi's salt situation is like a canary in the coal mine almost, for how climate change impacts very specific traditional industries.
I think that's a fair comparison. You see similar stories playing out globally, right? Coffee farmers struggling with changing rain patterns.
Winemakers dealing with heat waves and unpredictable harvests.
Exactly. Industries that depend fundamentally on predictable climate conditions are finding those conditions, well, less predictable.
And salt is just so fundamental. It's not a luxury item. It's in everything. It makes the vulnerability feel very real. The sheer fact that a place defined by salt production has to import it is, well, it's unsettling. It makes you think about the stability of supply chains for even the most basic things.
And the knock-on effects. The economic impact, the social impact on communities whose identities are tied to these industries. It goes beyond just whether salt is available on the shelf.
So wrapping this up then, Thoothukudi, Tamil Nadu's historic salt giant, facing a really unprecedented crisis. Production hammered by climate-linked weather changes.
Leading to this paradoxical need to import the very commodity they're famous for.
Yeah. And it throws up huge economic challenges, but also highlights this wider vulnerability.
It really does leave you wondering, doesn't it? What other systems, what other local industries that seem stable on the surface might actually be facing similar pressures from environmental shifts? It's a sobering thought about adaptation in a changing world.
Definitely something to chew on. Let's hope Thoothukudi finds a way through this. The resilience is there. The ideas seem to be forming. Hopefully they can adapt and bring those costs down again.
We'll have to wait and see. But it certainly underscores the need for proactive adaptation, not just there, but in many sectors.